First trick I want to talk about is contrast. Check out this great photograph by Ansel Adams. Adams was America's preeminent landscape photographer, and he chose to work almost exclusively in black and white. I think there's a reason for this. Black and white teases out contrast, unlike any other medium. If we look at this image by Adams, we see that contrast is used in several ways. The first is in light, or density. The ridge in the middle ground is in deep shadow. The ridge behind it is getting full light. The sky behind that is dark. And the plane across the bottom is getting occluded light. That variation in light, or density, is one of the things that makes this such an exceptional photograph. But there's more. If we look at the ridge in the middle ground, we see that the form is curved, but the ridge behind that has jagged edges. Across the bottom, the plane is flat. That's contrast in form, which is another type of contrast, which again adds to the beauty of this photograph. But there's even more. At the bottom of this frame, we see a little critter. I think it is probably a cow, and I doubt that it's an accident that this little guy found his way into the viewfinder. The scale of the cow versus the ridge behind him gives us a contrast in scale, which is another reason that this is an exceptional photograph. So, in graphic design, we can get contrast by mixing elements of different weight or density, mixing elements that are different in form, mixing elements that are different in scale, and, as we didn't see in the Ansel Adams photograph, mixing elements that are different in color or hue. How does this work in the real world? How do we use contrast in our design to make it exceptional? Well, here's an example. This is a poster I helped a faculty member with at CU quite a few years ago. It was an 18 by 24-inch poster used to promote a conference on campus, and this was our starting place. The first obvious use of contrast here is between the figure in the foreground and the background. Gold and purple, it's a great offsetting match. The next use of contrast is maybe a little counterintuitive. The title of the conference, Publishing the Stage, we made absolutely massive. We used 500-point type. The typeface is called Impact. It's heavy, it's dense, it's very modern. The subtitle for the conference, Print Performance in Early Modern Japan, and this is the counterintuitive part, we dropped down to something like 48-point type. The typeface is Times, it's elegant, it's fragile, and it's airy. The combination of those two typefaces seems like a crazy thing to do in design. Actually, if you go to a bookstore and you look at book covers, you look at magazine covers, everyone does this. It's one of the better ways to deal with type, using contrast to make your work look better. The rest of the particulars for our conference, smaller still. We drop all the way down to something like 18-point type. It's this inclusion of different type sizes and scales and weights that makes this composition, to my mind, work. Even with a document, we can include contrast in our design to make an otherwise ordinary document look exceptional. Weights, scales, color, all sorts of things to make a document stand out. And again, we'll see this everywhere. This is one of the better things to know when we're working with composition, to work with contrast, to make our work stand out. So I'm calling this Best Design Practices number 7, Contrast Commands Attention. Here's our Clarity guitar ad featuring our friend Quentin with a Clarity electric guitar, and we can see that in the ad we're using contrast in scale, contrast in weight, contrast in form, and contrast in color treatment, all working together to make this ad exceptional, to make it stand up and sing. And by the way, are we still lining elements up? Are we still thinking about a grid and thinking about structure? You bet we are. The cool thing about working with a grid is that it makes our work not only better, it makes it easier as well. Once we have a structure we like, we can recycle and we can rebuild to our heart's content.